welcome back to me and Bella ASMR. I hope you're doing well. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about the role of the observer. I think that sometimes in life we find ourselves drawn to particular archetypes or roles at certain points, and one that I have found myself quite one that's come up a lot for me recently is the role of the observer. I was just thinking about how when I was young, in school, and we had a play, and I got the role of the narrator in the play. So I was kind of, in a sense, it was one of the best parts that you could get, because you were basically on stage or to the side of the stage the whole time, and in between the songs and the acts you would explain what was going on and introduce the next scene, and you kind of got to watch the whole play, but you were kind of also removed from it because you weren't really a character yourself, right? You were just the narrator. And I think the role of the observer and the role of the storyteller are quite similar, or they're linked, I think, in my mind. But I started thinking about myself as an observer in the last maybe year or so. And I think there are a lot of reasons that I started thinking about this. I've always been a very thoughtful person, and I think a lot about what's going on around me. And often in social settings, I'm not the person who jumps in and meets everyone and is super bubbly and talkative. I will usually take a step back and I'll just watch what's going on around me and slowly try to figure out what's going on and who's who and how people are interacting with each other. So yeah, I think that as well, I was going through a time in my life where I felt that there were a lot of things that were outside of my control. And so I kind of accepted this in a way by telling myself that my role, I wasn't supposed to fix everything, I wasn't supposed to change anything, because I literally couldn't. My job was to just watch it all happen, because I needed to feel important in some way, but I wasn't able to act. But it made me feel more important to think that this is my job to observe, it's my job to be a witness, my job to record everything as well. I journal a lot, so I like to write things down, and I write down everything that I observe. And it was quite strange because at some point I was thinking about this whole being an observer thing, and out of the blue, people started talking to me about it without me bringing it up first. So, for example, I went to a festival and I went alone. It was my first festival. I went there alone didn't have any friends with me, didn't know anyone there. And I did spend, obviously I was dancing and having fun and doing all the festival things, but when I had downtime, I would write in my journal, and I'd sit by the river and I'd write about my experiences that day and how I was feeling and everything. And I didn't talk to many people at this festival. Again, I'm not very outgoing, so I felt it too intimidated to kind of go up to people and try to make friends. But one day when I was by the dance floor, and suddenly this guy came up to me. I hadn't seen him before, and he said, "Are you an artist?" And I was like, "What do you like? No, like, what do you mean?" And he was like, I saw you drawing by the river yesterday." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Like, he's seen me with my journal and he assumed I was drawing. He didn't realize I was writing. So I said, "Oh, like, actually I was like writing in my journal. Yeah, like, cool that you saw me, I guess." And he was like, "Oh, that's really awesome. You keep writing down, you keep recording everything, for the history books." I can't remember his exact wording, but he kind of made a joke out of it. And I was kind of like, "Oh, that's funny that he saw me." And then on my last day, I happened to walk past him again, and everyone was kind of packing up and heading home. And he said, "I hope you're still writing everything down. I hope you're still recording everything." So I thought that was a kind of random interaction where he was kind of acknowledging that I was observing what was going on. I was writing things down. Yeah. So there was that time, and then I had another time where I was at my girlfriend's parents' house, and we had made dinner for her family, but it was like all her. She made dinner and I kind of just sat there and kept her company. And then we were eating dinner and her mum was like, "Oh, like, thank you so much, Mia Bella, for helping cook the dinner for us." And I said, "Oh no, like, it was all her, I just sat and kept her company." And she said, "Oh, well, thank you for watching her make it. Thank you for being there to observe." And I was like, how trippy. Like people just kind of naturally seem to bring up the same sort of language that I was thinking about myself as being an observer, and then in these random situations they go, "Oh, you're watching, you're observing." Yeah. And sometimes I feel that it can feel quite isolating being the observer, especially in social situations. I find it easier to sit back and watch rather than necessarily participating a whole bunch. And I said that to my therapist one time. I was talking about how, I feel kind of like what am I really, what use is me being at a function with my friends if they're all talking and having a good time and I'm just sitting there watching them? And she said, "No, but they need someone to observe them. They need someone to witness them in that moment." And I was like, interesting way of thinking about it. And yeah, I talked about this to my friend, and I said, "But why can't my friends just observe themselves? Why do they need someone else to observe them?" And then she said, "I think that the being observed by the self versus being observed by the other is a different experience, and it's its own thing, it's its own role, and it's necessary in its own way. So make of that what you will." And I think I get the feeling that I always think that creation is such an important thing. Creativity is a very important value to me. I think everyone should create, even if you are not good at it or you don't consider yourself an artist. I think that it's important to make things. Maybe you make gifts for your friends, or maybe you draw things, maybe you doodle. You know, no matter how small, I think it's important to create things. And so when I think about the role of the observer, to me that seems like you are only receiving, you're taking things in, which is important as well. It's important to listen. But then the question is, what are you going to do with that? If I observe things my whole life and I experience these incredible things and I learn so much and I make all these connections by observing, what good is it to anyone if it just stays within my head my whole life? So that's when I sort of feel that there's maybe an opportunity or even an obligation to move beyond the observer role and to create something out of what I have taken in. So I think sometimes I think that maybe I want to be a writer, or to one day maybe publish a book or a memoir or maybe a poetry book. I write a lot, but where I get stuck is the fact that I need to edit it as well. I can't just, what good is it if I journal my whole life and it stays hidden? And I think that's part of the reason why I came back to my ASMR channel after so long, and I kind of have a different idea of what I want to do with it this time. I thought I would like to just talk more about my thoughts and maybe find some other people who think the same way and have interesting things to share with me as well. But yeah, I think being a writer would be super cool. I'm a reader. I love reading, and I think one of the best things about reading is when you read a book that's 50, 100, 200 years old, or however old it might be, and you realize that this author who lived an entirely different life to yours in an entirely different time, different social norms, different conditions, everything is completely different part of the world they live in, and they speak to you so deeply because they come to the same truths and understandings about life that you have with your completely different experiences, and you realize that there's this shared understanding about the world and about humanity and spirituality that they have understood, that you understand for completely different reasons, but it's the same thing, and I think that's so special. I'm currently reading East of Eden by John Steinbeck, and 100% think that that's one of those special books that you're like, wow, yep, that's it. You understand, you get it. It's cool to find the people that get it, even if they lived in a totally different time to you. So yeah, I think that's about all I had for today. I wonder if you have some kind of archetype that you feel yourself more connected to at this point in your life. I hope that you have a wonderful day or night. I hope that this was relaxing. And I will see you in the next video. Goodbye, 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 goodbye.